Okay, shall we make a start? So, welcome everyone. It's a bit warm, and so feel free to open the windows because it will only get warmer as the evening goes on. So, today we have Anna Johnstone, who is a British Catholic convert and former classical singer. She read theology at Cambridge, unfortunately, and afterwards worked in care and as a governess, becoming the governess for the siblings of St. Carlo Acutis, a post she held for 3 years in Assisi starting in 2015, and she remains a family friend. She is currently founding the Community of the Transfiguration of St. Carlo Acutis on the Isle of Wight, which is hoping to begin formally in October 2026, if I understand correctly.
But my novitiate should start then. We've just had the foundation retreat. Yeah, the next 3 years will probably be a bit slow as everything totally clarifies.
It's starting hopefully some point in the future. So please join me in welcoming Anna to the Newman Society tonight.
Well, it's a very, very great joy, privilege and honour to be with you all this evening. And I hope that in the course of the veneration later and everything that happens this evening, that you will feel that you have a better grasp of St. Carlo, and that the talk is billed as St. Carlo, our friend in heaven. And he is a very, very great friend if you want him to be. And I will start by bringing his presence more fully into the room, because I have actually got the relic with me here. And I'm going to get it out. So this relic is a first-class relic. A first-class relic is a piece of the saint's body. A second-class relic is something that maybe they've worn or used. And a third-class relic has touched a first-class relic. So this is a first-class relic. It was given to me by the mother of St. Carlo. That doesn't mean to say it's something informal. It comes along with this certificate from the postulator out in Italy. And I have to have the permission of my bishop to travel with it, and the visit, because this is actually Archbishop Longley, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, they have to give permission really too. And it's got an unbroken wax seal at the back of it. So this particular reliquary is, I feel, called more than anything to go into primary schools and schools in general, but primary schools, because that's my area of particular experience, that age group. And also that I was the governess to the little brother and sister of St. Carlo in that age group, 5 to 8. So I particularly feel called to go into primary schools, which I've been in today and will be into another one tomorrow. So the reliquary is a little bit sparkly and small, especially for children. So here we go. So there we are. It's twinkly for children. So this is St. Carlo's first-class relic, his hair. I'm going to put it down there, and later, at the end of the evening, you have the opportunity to venerate it. And first thing I want to tell you is that St. Carlo's first miracle in the course of his canonization, for his beatification, the first miracle did happen within a veneration event. So there was a little boy out in South America called Mateus Viana, who was 4, and he had a very bad stomach problem. He couldn't keep food down. And it was said his pancreas was deformed from birth, and the doctors hadn't been able to help him. So he had all the scans about this deformed pancreas, and his parish priest knew about Carlo. This was back in 2013, and obtained a relic. There was a veneration event in the parish, and this little Mateus was encouraged to ask Jesus and Carlo, who then was just servant of God, what he wanted. So little Mateus, he went up to it and he said, "Stop vomiting." And it seems that he felt better immediately. He was able to eat a normal dinner that evening, had steak and chips. They went back to he hasn't been vomiting since. They went back to the hospital, and the doctors were mystified because there was no scar tissue from an operation. They took scans, everything was completely normal. This pancreas was completely normal. And the family said, no, we haven't been to any other doctors. there's no scar tissue from an operation because he hasn't had an operation. So this little Matthäus was healed on the spot, just as Jesus heals people in the Gospels. I particularly love this miracle because it's about nourishment, and Carlo wants to tell us about the nourishment of the Eucharist. So we'll just start this way with the relic is with you now, and you'll have the opportunity to touch it later on, but it's a sign of St. Carlo's presence with us. So I'm going to put this bag away. And you've got a handout, which is quite handy to have. And I'm going to start at the beginning. Obviously, my experience, I was with the family for 3 years, but I've made a point of, wherever possible, for example, at the beatification or at the canonization, trying to talk to people from Carlo's life, and it's been very fascinating. And I'll tell you little things that I've picked up in the course of the talk. And I've been to places in his life, you know, in his homes, their homes, his parish church, met the sisters at his little kindergarten school. So this is where I'm coming from. I've got a personal knowledge, and I try to stick with what I've personally seen. It's not from the books, what I say. It's I try to verify the general information that we get about Carlo with what I've seen with my own eyes. And I've ended up with quite two strong themes, actually. One is St. Carlo, our friend in heaven, and the other is really concentrating on his exhibitions. I always think it's a bit like, if you want to know Shakespeare, you read his plays. If you want to know St. Carlo, first of all, let's start with the exhibition of Eucharistic miracles. But he actually started 4 exhibitions. And I think this is where, for me, his greatness lies, is that I think that he will come to be known as one of the greatest catechists of the 21st century. At the moment, this isn't coming through, that the interest is more on his relatability. The fact that we can, you know, he looks like us, he was totally immersed in the sort of life that we're immersed in. And that's a very, very important part of his appeal. But I would call that his horizontal witness to us and horizontal example. And I think that gets the major attention at the moment, especially maybe in this country. But he has this great vertical catechetical information to teach us. And I love to push people a little bit in that direction. So just to tack back to the beginning, as you probably know, his parents weren't religious, and he had a Polish nanny who was very devoted to St. Pope John Paul II, and this Polish nanny was with Carlo for 4 years, and it seems that she wasn't really prevented from imparting her faith to this little Carlo, taking him into church, teaching him prayers. And also there's a lovely little kindergarten. He was in Milan, a lovely kindergarten school nearby, the Marcelline. And I've met some of the nuns who taught him, and lovely Italian nuns. You know, if you imagine warm Italian nuns, these were his nuns. So it doesn't get a lot of attention, but there's 2 strong influences that he had as a very little boy: his actual school and his Polish nanny. And he was very intelligent, and amidst all this, he really decided for Jesus. You know, he knew that he loved Jesus, and I think by his nature, he was naturally a sweet, amiable child. And so the stories that he heard about how loving Jesus was, it all appealed to him. It all made sense. He was gifted with a lovely nature, and the early circumstances of his life and the information that he came across didn't change that natural quality within him remained, his natural sweetness. So by the age of 7, well, just tap back a bit. So he began asking his mother questions, and she felt she couldn't answer them. You may have seen videos of Anna Acutis. They seem quite prevalent on the internet, but she did actually hang back for many years from being too much of a presence in in the whole cause. I mean, the whole time that I was with them, 2015 to 2018, she did very little by way of talks. I mean, if somebody asked her, she would, but by no means was she sort of the key figure in taking things forward. I mean, I shall come back to that. What they did do, and again, I suppose I picked up on that, they were very much facilitating people getting hold of the exhibition. So one's been able to download this exhibition for a very long period of time. But if people were struggling with that, they would try to send the exhibition out. And that's my main memory of how they were interacting with St. Carlo's cause, was just facilitating the exhibition getting out there. I've gone off track a bit. So we'll go back to St. Carlo is 5. He's asking his mother questions, and she then starts getting involved with it all and searching for answers herself, going off to a very fantastic priest, I think in the Bologna area, but she always says he was like the Padre Pio of the north of Italy. So she's someone who's able to find what the best things are and go to them, So, and they're a family that very much facilitate each other's interests. So the fact that St. Carlo was very interested, they helped him, and they would do that for each other, all the different, whatever their interests are. So Antonio did start studying the faith and did become part of Carlo's journey, but still, Carlo was the driving force. There's no doubt about it. And his first Holy Communion at the age of was at the age of 7, and it was brought forward. His peers were having their first Holy Communion at the age of 9. I don't know if you've seen the news. I thought it was fake news to begin with. I just couldn't believe my ears. But where he had his first Holy Communion, the beautiful, I mean, the frescoes inside, just stunning, of Bernaga. It burnt down just a few days ago. I don't know if you've seen that. On the eve of his feast day, where he had his first Holy Communion, all the nuns are fine, but it really shocked me. Did you know that? Yeah, it's absolute tragedy that the place of his first Holy Communion, so beautiful, has been razed to the ground by fire in the last few days. So he had his first Holy Communion. Extraordinarily, on the day of his first Holy Communion, he wrote, "To be always close to Jesus, that's my life's plan." It's extraordinary. That's the one phrase that has touched me the most in the end. It has actually, that's probably revolutionized my spiritual life, that one thought, to be always close to Jesus, that's my life's plan. So, I was traveling for a long time, and you get lost in the weeds in the end. You know so much, and you just can't quite focus, and it focused it down. All we need is to be close to Jesus on a daily basis. Wake up in the morning, let's be close to Jesus. What's happened in the past is in the past. What's in the future, we can't control. Today, we can be close to the Lord. And this is what Carlo lived by from the age of 7. Another thing about this family is that they have great focus. They're intelligent, they've got great focus and passion. And so here we are, little St. Carlo decided he was always going to be close to Jesus. And one of the manifestations of that was that he wanted to go to Mass every day, and he wanted to pray the Rosary every day. I mean, again, extraordinary decisions for a 7-year-old. And again, he was the driving force of that. Adults in his life, when he was 7, helped him, had to accompany him. The church is very close by. Oh, the cat. But yeah, he was the driving force of that. So, for example, Rajesh, who's like the sort of the family butler, housekeeper, who's still there, And he's another one, you see. When I knew him in 2015 to 2018 era, he was the one. He was up in Milan, still physically sending out the exhibition, and feeling that he really wanted to do this for Carlo. So Rajesh, who was a Brahmin Hindu, he converted to. He was baptized purely because of Carlo's conversations with him. You know, little Carlo would tell him what's what, you know, with the faith, and Rajesh was very impressed by him and found it very convincing. I don't have any difficulty understanding that from my experience of his siblings, but of course I can't talk about it. But yes, I can just imagine Carlo telling Rajesh how loving Jesus would make his life much better. Rajesh talks about this himself in videos. So Rajesh is one of the ones that St. Carlo converted early on. So here we have Carlo getting on with going to church every day, praying the rosary every day. And then when he's 11, he becomes a catechist. There aren't 11-year-old catechists in this country. There are a few 11-year-old catechists in Italy. It's not unheard of. Anyway, so there's dear St. Carlo teaching his peers. And he had this wonderful gift of metaphors and explaining the faith, truly gifted as a teacher of the faith. So he has all these wonderful sound bites, among which is, the Eucharist is my highway to heaven. Or as I prefer to say, being in Britain, because the word is autostrada. L'Eucaristia è la mia autostrada al cielo. And autostrada, American, is highway. And in the UK, it's motorway. And well, I just prefer motorway. I just find it very direct, and everything about St. Carlo is speedy as well. I mean, he loved fast cars. He's been so fast to be canonized. He was very fast through the hospital when he died. There's a lot of speed to Carlo, and there's a lovely picture I have of him that I use. He must be about 6, and he's got this white T-shirt on. It says "Start, acceleration, finish," and that just seems to me so Carlo. So the Eucharist is my motorway to heaven. One of his sayings. There's quite a few of the sayings on the back there. So there he is, teaching the faith. Another wonderful one, actually, also on the back at the bottom, is he had this metaphor for the sacrament of reconciliation. He said, and he went every week, that if you imagine a hot air balloon and ascending upwards, and it will get higher if you throw out weights. If there's weights in the basket, throw out the weights. He says, going to confession, even with venial sins, small sins, the soul will ascend and soar higher to heaven. If you go to confession and confess your small sins, your venial sins, that will enable your soul to soar to heaven. So that's one of his wonderful teaching points. So there he is, teaching the faith to his peers. I mean, another thing I think about St. Carlo, he was ever the gentleman in his whole approach to things. He wouldn't force his faith on people. He didn't force his faith on his school friends. If there was a class discussion, yes, he would say his point of view. Or in the role of a catechist, there's the invitation. The invitation is there to talk about the faith. But he didn't inflict his thoughts on people. And some people, friends, wouldn't know too much about them because he wasn't going to force it. Carlo was always a gentleman. And I think he's, just to interject to this point, his parents, so you'll have seen Antonia, his mother, on videos. So she's very exuberant, passionate, intelligent, clear, very generous, but extroverted. His father, you may have seen, but he doesn't really give many interviews. He's a real gentleman, very courteous. It actually got English blood in, English and Polish. That the mother of Carlo's father, half Polish, half English, and Andrea, the father, is a real gentleman. And my intuition, obviously, I didn't meet Carlo, but my intuition is that Saint Carlo, by nature, had the best of both parents. But then, obviously, he grafted himself onto Jesus, and that's where the power of his apostolate came from, the depth of his abiding in Jesus. So anyway, we're at the age of 11. He discovers the Eucharistic miracle of Lanciano. Now this blows him away, okay? He wonders why the adults in his life have not told him about this miracle. So why the priests, the teachers, his parents, he's discovered it. He's just blown away by it. And he thinks, now, if only the whole world could know about this, they would understand that Jesus is truly present in our churches. So he had this, one of his sayings was that, you know, there are great queues outside football matches and there are great queues outside rock concerts. If people only knew that Jesus was truly present in our churches, there would be great queues outside our churches. So he felt that he'd discovered something here. He was always, you know, very intelligent, very good on the computer and programming, and he felt that he had the tool there to spread the knowledge about this Eucharistic miracle and other Eucharistic miracles. So he, just as he had the idea to go to Mass every day, he had the idea to collate all church-approved Eucharistic miracles and put them into an exhibition. I've always been curious about how this exhibition evolved, and it was a wonderful little piece of providence. On the day of his canonization, I sat next to his confirmation sponsor, Sidi Perrin, and we just couldn't stop talking about the exhibition. So it transpires that in the same way that St. Carlo was obsessed by the Eucharistic miracle of Lanciano, his godfather, sponsor, was obsessed with the Eucharistic miracle of Bolsena. And he told me that the start of the exhibition was Carlo wrote reams and reams and reams about Lanciano. And he took lots of photographs, so of Lanciano, and then this is where the family really help each other. Carlo wanted to go to other shrines, and Carlo took lots of photographs. And then he wrote small pieces about some of these other miracles. So Carlo, besides loving computers, he loved photography, videos. So this is when he was 11. This is how the exhibition started. And it gradually, as he got older and was able to do more detailed research, it gradually filled out and became more balanced. And also he did have help from his parents and Sidi Perrin. And 3 years later, it was ready to be shown. It was shown in Rome during the year of the Eucharist. Now, I've brought with me some of the panels because I want you to have a visceral grasp of this exhibition, which can be overlooked, you see. And I don't want you to overlook it. So let's see. So this is the front of the exhibition. It says conceived and devised by St. Carlo. And here we have his favourite miracle, Lanciano, which I'm going to tell you about. There's two panels. Do you want to have one? 2 panels for Lanciano. Now, obviously, all this is online. There are actually, at present, about 160 panels in the exhibition. Gives you an idea of the scope of it. That's about 130 miracles. So, as you can see, this panel has got, this miracle's got 2 panels. And there'd be some panels that have about 6. And it could be about miraculous communions or something like that. But so, thank you very much. the other exhibitions, while we're on it, the other exhibitions that St. Carlo started were all church approved apparitions of Our Lady. He didn't finish it. That was finished, I think, 2014 by others. And he started one on heaven, purgatory and hell. And he started one on angels and demons. And they haven't been developed. But that gives you something of the scope of his, you know, he had the fullness of the Catholic faith. So I'm going to tell you about Lanciano. Let's put this down. So obviously, we believe as Catholics that the bread and wine become the body, blood, soul and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ. Transubstantiation. At every valid Mass, the substance changes. It transubstantiates. The thing is, though, it stays looking like bread and wine. Now, we're all very different with our temperaments. Some of us are more intuitive, more feeling. Some of us find it easier to feel that Jesus is truly present in the Blessed Sacrament. If you look at statistics in the West of Catholics in general, there's something horrific of people not understanding that Jesus is truly present. Does anybody know? It's something like 60% of Catholics don't understand that Jesus is truly present. I mean, it's probably a much, you know, in this room here, there's probably some people who feel a bit queasy about it, but you can see why people's faith is tempted to doubt, because it still looks like bread and wine. Now, I just want to throw in this thought. Imagine that you went to Mass and every time it changed into flesh and blood. Would you like that? You see, I wouldn't like that. I'd find that horrifying to go to Mass and to be asked to consume blood and flesh. So it's God's kindness to us, his delicacy, his humility, that he stays as bread and wine that we find easy to consume. But you can see the catch-22 in this. For it to be palatable comes with it being also, it can be natural to doubt. And even priests can doubt. And this is what happened in the case of the Lanciano miracle. It was a Basilian priest back in 750 AD, and he doubted the power of his priesthood, what was passing through his hands. And on this particular occasion, when he raised the consecrated host, it turned into flesh, and the wine turned into 5 globules of blood. Now, he was converted on the spot. His community were very moved, and they faithfully conserved this miracle. For ease, you can see it, rather than me opening this out again. You can see it. It's this one in the middle here, the blue one. So at the bottom there is the globules of blood, and in the top one is the flesh. So to this day, you can go to Lanciano and you can see this. So the first amazing thing is it's not disintegrated. 1,300 years this tissue has been like this. It's not disintegrated. The next thing is that I'm telling you it's flesh and blood. How do I know? How do we know? Well, the point is that science wasn't advanced enough for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years really to be able to know. It wasn't until the 1970s that science had advanced to the point where they could definitely say what it was. So a sample was given to Professor Lenoli in Italy, and he said it's tissue from the human heart, it's blood type AB, it's not just anywhere in the human heart, it's the myocardium muscle of the human heart. The myocardium muscle is responsible for pumping the human heart. Without the myocardium muscle, we'd all be dead. And all these types of Eucharistic miracles, it's always exactly the same result, always blood type AB, tissue from the human heart, myocardium muscle of the human heart. And then you get some extra results as well. So there's down at the bottom there, bottom right-hand side, this is the Buenos Aires miracles in the 1990s. The modern ones have lovely photography. So that was Pope Francis was Cardinal of Buenos Aires then, and he sent that one for a blind test to a very eminent pathologist, Professor Zugibe. And Professor Zugibe found all these same results: blood type AB, tissue from the human heart, myocardial muscle. He found white blood cells. White blood cells die 15 minutes or so after leaving the human body. And he found evidence that the person from whom the sample had come had been tortured with blows above the chest. And he was horrified. He's blind testing. As far as he's concerned, this is from someone very recently being tortured and has had a piece of his heart extracted, and he's been tortured. So he was astounded and relieved when told that, no, this is the Blessed Sacrament. My favourite picture in the whole exhibition is bottom left-hand corner there. That's, well, first thing to say is that St. Carlo used to say to his mum, why doesn't Jesus send more Eucharistic miracles? Because it'll help people's faith so much. Well, just a few days after he died, there was the Eucharistic miracle of Tixla in Mexico. And 2 years to the day after he died, so this one, 12th of October 2008, this Eucharistic miracle of Sokółka in Poland. And as I say, this is my favourite picture in the exhibition because it's bread turning into flesh. So even under the microscope, at a molecular level, it's bread turning into flesh. And there's nobody who could recreate that. You know, it's beyond our capacities to recreate that. When I talk about this, in the end, I get so overwhelmed by the magnitude of the information. It sometimes causes me to just come to a little full stop for a second. I just have to catch my thinking. So basically, this is really mind blowing. Yes, I know where I want to go with this. So. Something I just want to throw in here. I think that St. Carlo is a real figure of unity for the Church. So on the one hand, we have these Eucharistic miracles and new Eucharistic miracles happening within the context of the Novus Ordo Mass. When Carlo was dying, he offered all his sufferings for the Church and for Pope Benedict. And within the year, Pope Benedict had written Summorum Pontificum. And I think there's a connection there. And if you think about, a lot of the miracles in this exhibition will have been from the Old Rite Mass. So I think Carlo is for both. He's for every valid Mass. And I think that it's not unconnected. And I don't know anybody else who says this, but there we go. I think it's not unconnected that within months of him offering his sufferings for Pope Benedict, that Pope Benedict issued Summorum Pontificum. That might be a controversial point, but Carlo is the gentleman. He loves all Catholics, Old Rite Catholics and New Rite Catholics. Okay, I do want to come on to his death. So this exhibition was completed. I mean, it has continued to evolve. I think that Mr. Perrin told me that they had to change some of the coding a bit after he died to make it easier for people to download or something. I'm not quite sure, but it has had an evolution. It's had more translations added in and more miracles added in. But this job was substantially done. And then in October 2006, Carlo got ill with what seemed to be a virus. And after a few days, he couldn't walk. And obviously was taken to hospital and discovered to have a very aggressive leukemia. And it was very fast. As I think I said earlier, his doctor said that he passed through his care like a meteor. And they commented, the doctors commented on the tremendous sweetness in his eyes. He was serene about it all. He was comforting his mother, saying, Mum, don't worry, I'm going to Jesus. And St. Carlo was passionate about heaven. we take to heart this: the Eucharist is my motorway to heaven. We tend to focus on the Eucharist because he was such a great teacher of Jesus being truly present in the Eucharist. But I think really the heaven was also very important to Carlo. He knew the destination, and he's got lots of wonderful sayings about heaven too, how we're called to heaven. We're all called to be saints. He wanted us to know that. So Carlo died. It was all very quick. It was very serene. A very, very holy death. Then at his funeral, it was massively attended. Took his parents by surprise, and someone was apparently cured of cancer during the funeral. You only need 2 miracles for a canonization, but there are a lot of miracles connected with Saint Carlo. And then sometime later, his friends did a Facebook group which sort of took off, and the exhibition took off globally. And his parish priest was getting inquiries from places like South America saying, "We want to come and visit the place where this young Carlo worshipped." And they were making these tiny little biographies of Carlo. So this was the driving force. He had a natural, what they call cult, la fama di santità, the fame of sanctity. We don't think of that in this country, but la fama di santità. He had the fame of sanctity, and it's always just had such a natural, strong progression. I remember when they opened his tomb, and he came out not completely intact, but in a very good state. And afterwards, I thought, well, I mean, every step has just been shocking. And then you think afterwards, well, yeah, of course, it's Carlo. When I reflected upon it, it didn't surprise me that, they opened his tomb after 13 years and he's still in a very good state. There's some signs of decay. That's a wax mask on his face, but all the internal organs were there, and they were able to use his heart as the relic for the beatification. I mean, when I heard that they were going to use his heart, I felt a bit queasy about it, but in the event, it was very, very beautiful, and it feels so right as well that St. Carlo has taught so much about Jesus' heart. And of course, knowing that these Eucharistic miracles are tissue from Jesus, the tissue from the human heart, that really brings alive our devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So the fact that Carlo's heart was intact and used for the beatification just seems so right. And his heart is in a reliquary at the top of Assisi, not at where his body is, but in San Rufino, the cathedral, up at the top there. There's just one other thing that I want to tell you about, which, again, it doesn't get much attention. It's on the back here, St. Carlo's spirituality. Obviously, he was very devoted to Our Lady, particularly Our Lady of Fatima. But he had this wonderful teaching that we're all called to be the beloved disciple. Rather like this phrase, to be always close to Jesus, that's my life's plan. This teaching of Carlo's, which we're coming to now, that has also really touched me. Very obvious as soon as I'd heard it, but I'd never thought about it in years and years of being a Catholic. So he said that St. John, the beloved disciple, he said every time that we go and pray before the Blessed Sacrament, pray, whether it's adoration or whether just in front of the tabernacle, that we are like John, the beloved disciple, resting our head on Jesus' heart, and that we're all called into that belovedness, just like St. John. We're all called to be like St. John, the beloved disciple. And similarly, when we go to Mass, it's like the other apostles, they fled, but St. John remained at the foot of the cross. And Carlo said, just when we go to Mass, we're being like John, the beloved disciple, at the foot of Jesus' cross. We're all called into this belovedness. however much life might throw at us and might seem to make us think to the contrary, this is God. We are the beloved of God, and Carlo wants us to grow into that by spending time with Jesus as he did. I can see we're at 10 to 9, and I think we can open it up for questions, because that might spark some other angles.
Wonderful, thank you.